Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I have another First to Fight kit, this time a Panzer III variant, the Panzer BFWG III Ausf D1, Naimeki Chzlog Dowodzenia? Yes, let's just offend all the Polish folk with our terrible attempts to read the language. What do you mean, ow? Okay, mine. Anyway, this is a 72nd scale plastic kit from First to Fight for their Wurzeisen 1939 wargaming system. I have certainly said that totally wrong and somebody probably told me how to say it last time, but I've forgotten how and won't be trying again in this video. I believe BFWG is short for Befehlswagen or some other pronunciation, which is a command wagon. This explains the big radio antenna on the engine deck that you can see in the picture. It's an interesting looking vehicle, and that's why I chose this one. The back of the box shows a basic painting and marking guide, and some assembly instructions. As with the 6-rad kit I built, these are kind of small and hard to read, but you can find the instructions for this online. There's a link to that in the description below. Inside the box we find 3 sprues moulded in dark grey plastic, and these are pretty good. They do have mould lines, of course, but they're not too heavy and won't require too much cleanup. There is also a bit of flash, and this is mostly found around the tracks. A little bit annoying, but not too bad. The detailing is fairly good, though do keep in mind that this is intended for wargaming, so it's not going to have extreme detail or anything like that, but it is pretty decent. The antenna part, like with the First to Fight 6-rad I did a while ago, is quite nice and thin. Of course, that does come with its own issues, but if you are careful, it should be fine. There's also quite a few small detail-y bits to add, which is always nice. Sometimes a little bit fiddly, but hey, that's the price you pay. I rather like the lower hull for this kit. There's a lot of good suspension detail moulded into the sides. It looks a lot different to what you would normally see on the side of a Panzer III, and that appeals to me. The track sprue is kind of interesting. The way they've gone about moulding the return rollers and road wheel sets is quite unusual, and I've never seen tracks like this. I don't think it's a bad way to do tracks, but there were issues with them, and you'll see that soon. The decals are incredibly simple, just some white crosses. I don't suppose you really need anything more than that, but if you want to be fancy and you want to add more markings, I'm sure other decals in the appropriate scale aren't too hard to come by. Okay, that's what's in the box. Let's start gluing bits of plastic together, starting with the tracks. As you can see, the way these go together is a bit unusual. The inner sections of return roller and road wheels have half of the tracks moulded onto them. I suspect the idea here was to eliminate gaps between the wheels and tracks so they would be in contact and look neat when everything's all together. It's not a bad idea, I just don't think it's been executed very well here. Obviously the idea is simple, glue the parts onto the main track part, but for me it was quite difficult to get the parts together, particularly the road wheels. I had to do a lot of trimming, scraping and nudging. I also had to apply a lot of pressure and hold the parts quite a bit, and the fit didn't end up being super great anyway, though from the sides they don't look too bad, and I guess that is the point. You'll probably notice, though I didn't until it was much too late, that the central idle wheel parts don't quite line up. I was quite careful to use the correct parts, but I am of course only human and do make mistakes. Mistakes that maybe you can learn from. Either the parts are a bad fit, or I used the wrong parts. Which do you think is more likely? I think it's me using the wrong parts. I did mention quite a few times on stream that these tracks are going to look a lot better if I just coat them in mud when it's painting time, and that is probably what's going to have to happen. Moving along, I add the drive sprocket. These are keyed and pretty easy to install. You just press them into place. Next, I attach the tank's butt, which is of course the technical term. The part goes into place nice and easily, which, after the fiddliness of the tracks, I appreciated. This nice rack of smoke thingies goes into place here. There are some tiny little guide knobs for this, though they didn't seem to work all that well. Looks like I got it in the right place anyway despite that. And now, back to the running gear. You'll notice these idler wheels are keyed and go together pretty easily. The problem I encountered here is kind of funny. There's no hole to allow these to be mounted on the track set the way they should be. You can see where it should be, and making a hole there would be pretty simple, but it was slightly easier just to cut the pin off the back of the wheel. Snip! Then the wheels can be glued into place in what I think is the obvious location. Of course, I'm old and crap and was pretty tired when I did this, so I managed to put them on the wrong side while filming this. Fortunately, I discovered this in time, and was able to pull the parts apart and put them back together again properly. It wouldn't be a Herbert Erpaderp video if there was no mistakes. Besides, anybody that tells you they've never done something like this is a filthy liar. Anyway, the track sets can then go onto the sides of the hull. I apply plenty of glue to the contact points in order to receive the blessings of the glue god, though when applying pressure, I would caution against pressing too hard. I feel like it would be quite easy to cause some breakage here, so be careful. Here you can see the really interesting looking suspension detail. I'm sure somebody is going to assert that this is a Panzer IV because of the 8 sets of road wheels per side, but this is a Panzer III. Ausf B, C and D had wheel sets like this, and similar suspension. I did obviously have to look this up because I'm no Panzer scientist, and I don't know this stuff off the top of my head, but we did also talk about this on stream and it was quite interesting. Good times. Moving along, I attached the upper hull to the lower hull assembly, and this is quite easy thanks to the rather obvious guide pins and their corresponding sockets. The instructions seem to want the detail parts to be added before doing this, but it seems more sensible to me to add those when the hull is all together. It means we're much less likely to apply pressure and accidentally cause damage to the small bits we glue on. Let's add some of those detail-y bits now. This vent thing isn't quite a small and easily broken part, but I did manage to clip the guides off of it, so that's something. It is okay though. It's not too hard to figure out the positioning of this one. I follow this with the jack. This was a little bit more fiddly to get into place. The instructions on the box are pretty small, and I was having trouble verifying which way around this should go, but it's on, and I think it looks okay. A radio antenna comes next, and this comes molded into its protective casing, obviously in the down position. It's not too bad, though tough luck if you would prefer it in the up position, I guess. It is less breakable in this position though, so I'm fine with it. And it's not too hard to install, it just needed a little bit of friendly nudging. Here's a fiddly part, the horn. Or is it a siren? It's a small and fiddly thing, and it was kind of tricky to place, but I did place it, so there. On the other side, I add this venti thing. You can see that I didn't remove the guides on this part. Making progress. These guides make this part very easy to place, and you can see that it lines up with the other one pretty well. The front plate goes on next, and there are some convenient guide tabs along the bottom of this part. It's nice and easy to get this into place. Next, another radio antenna, again in the down position in the protective housing. There's another antenna already, you might say, but this is a command vehicle, so it makes sense that there would be more radio equipment than usual. This part is just as easy to get into place as the one on the other side was. The most fiddly part of this model are these headlamps. They do have a little mounting pin, which does help a tiny bit, but they were quite tricky to get into place. I did use tweezers, but I would suggest being very careful with this. You can see the shape of these parts is not ideal for tweezering, because rounded parts really like to go flying if you apply too much pressure and they happen to slip out of place. At any rate, I got these into place, and they don't look too bad. The final hull detail is this large antenna, which mounts onto the engine deck. This is quite easy to do, thanks to the little guide indentations on the engine deck. You do still have to be careful not to break this part, and I'm happy to say that in this build, none of the antennas were broken. Clearly this is a little bit less delicate than the one on the 6rad kit, but I'm still taking that as a win. And with that being the final touch, the hull is now completed. Let's make a turret. This is pretty simple. I start by gluing the two halves of the turret together, and this is made very easy thanks to the guide pins. A little pressure to make sure there aren't any unwanted gaps, and the turret is already mostly done. The commander's cupola comes next, and you can see that there's a little lip on the bottom of this part, which kind of forces you to position it around the right way, or have it look really weird. I then slot the gun part in through the back of the mantlet part, which is easy enough. I don't think you could even put this part in upside down if you wanted. That then goes onto the front of the turret like so. There are guides in here which prevent this from going on upside down, so you shouldn't find this very challenging at all. And that's the turret completed. Super quick and easy. It mounts onto the hull using the typical locking tab mechanism, and it looks pretty good. You can even rotate it a little bit, though quite obviously, the antenna will prevent a full 360-degree rotation. That's okay though. This tank's job is to tell other tanks what to do, not spin its turret around and around, because that's the job of other tanks, probably. Anyway, the Panzer BFWG III Ausf D1 in 72nd scale by first to fight is now completed. This has turned out to be a pretty decent little model, and I'm happy with it. Though I do have to admit, particularly while assembling the tracks, I was a little bit worried that it might not turn out very good. Fortunately, that isn't the case, and even the tracks look pretty good from the side. They won't need as much mud to hide the defects and fit issues as I initially thought they might. It does still have its little flaws and it's not perfect, but then what model is? The flaws I'm mostly talking about, other than the tracks, are the few little gaps here and there, and that should be pretty easy to deal with. I think the vehicle itself is rather interesting. I'm sure most people, when they think of a Panzer III, imagine the later versions with the 6 road wheels and none of that cool suspension detail. I guess I also expect the 6-wheel Panzer III, so for me this is kind of unusual. Not that that's a bad thing, of course. From what I've seen, First to Fight do a lot of interesting and unusual vehicles, and that really appeals to me, so I've ordered a bunch more of their kits. If you're interested in seeing more of these kits, let me know in the comments section below. I mean, I'm going to build them anyway, but it is interesting to know if it's something that people want to see. This kit was, for the most part, pretty fun to build. The tracks were a bit annoying because of how much fiddling and trimming I had to do with them, but other than that, I enjoyed putting this together. It was also nice and quick. I was able to get this done in one stream, and that means without the distractions of streaming, you could whip this together very quickly indeed. That fun, relatively simple and quick assembly is pretty appealing to me, and it makes sense that this kit would be designed that way. It is, after all, a wargaming kit, and I feel confident in saying that a lot of wargamers would prefer their kits to be quick and easy to put together. In this case, and the 6 rad I built, these are a bit more delicate than I would expect in a wargaming kit, at least in terms of the radio antennas, but I don't think that's really a problem. Just don't be too rough handling them. Anyway, this is a nice little kit. I think it's going to paint up quite well, and there are definitely going to be more First to Fight kits on my channel in the future. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the comment section below. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you would like to share, why not drop by our Discord community and show some pictures? We would love to see what you've done. If you want to watch me build kits like this live on stream, head on over to my Twitch channel, which is where I stream. The link is in the description below. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron if you want to see my videos a bit early, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch next time I'm live. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and, as always, I shall return soon. So, until then, be excellent to each other, have an amazing day, and thank you for watching. Farewell.